Here's something nobody wants to hear, but everyone needs to understand. The moment you make a woman the center of your emotional universe, you've already lost yourself. Not lost her, lost yourself. Your peace, your purpose, your sense of direction, all of it becomes hostage to her moods, her approval, her presence or absence in your life. And the cruelest part? This desperate attachment is precisely what drives her away. What you think will keep her close is the exact thing that makes you unattractive, not just to her, but to yourself. Before we go further, if you've ever found yourself checking your phone obsessively for her response, if you've ever changed your entire schedule hoping to run into her, if you've ever felt that sick feeling in your stomach because she seems distant, stay with me. This isn't about becoming cold or manipulative. This is about reclaiming the part of yourself that you handed over without realizing it. And if you're serious about mastering your inner world, subscribe, because we're going deep into territory most people are too uncomfortable to explore. The Stoics lived in a world very different from ours, but human nature hasn't changed. Marcus Aurelius was an emperor with absolute power, yet in his private writings, he reminded himself daily not to be disturbed by things outside his control. Epictetus taught that suffering comes not from events themselves, but from our judgments about them. And when it comes to romantic desire, to the pull of attraction and the pain of rejection, these ancient principles become immediately, almost painfully relevant. Let's start with what's actually happening when a woman becomes an obsession. On the surface, you think you want her, her company, her affection, her body. But underneath, something else is operating. You want the feeling she gives you. You want the validation of being chosen. You want the relief from the nagging sense that you're not enough on your own. You want her to complete something in you that feels incomplete. And this is where the trap springs shut. The moment you need something from another person to feel okay about yourself, you've given them power you can never take back through force or strategy. You've made your emotional state dependent on variables you cannot control. Her feelings, her attention, her decisions, her mood on any given day. You're now at the mercy of forces outside yourself, which is the definition of psychological slavery according to the Stoics. Research in attachment theory confirms what the Stoics understood intuitively. Anxious attachment, the constant need for reassurance and fear of abandonment, creates exactly the distance it fears. When you're constantly seeking validation from a romantic partner, your nervous system is in a state of chronic activation. You're always scanning for threats to the connection, always on alert for signs she's pulling away. And this vigilance, this anxiety, it's exhausting to be around. It's not mysterious why it pushes people away. Nobody wants to be responsible for another person's emotional stability. But here's what makes this particularly insidious. Society has sold us a story about love that makes this dependency seem romantic. We've been fed narratives where obsession equals passion, where someone who can't live without you is proof of real love, where jealousy and possessiveness are signs of caring deeply. We've confused intensity with intimacy, neediness with devotion. And so when you feel that desperate pull toward a woman, when you find yourself unable to focus on anything else, you think that's love. You think that's how it's supposed to feel. It's not love, it's ego. Your ego has identified her as the solution to its fundamental problem, the fear that you're not enough. The ego is always looking for external validation because it knows, on some level, that it's a construct, a story you tell yourself about who you are. And that story always feels fragile, always needs reinforcing. A woman's desire for you, her choosing you over other men, her continued presence in your life. These become the evidence the ego needs that you matter, that you're valuable, that you're worthy. The Stoics saw through this mechanism 2,000 years ago. Epictetus taught his students to distinguish between what's in their control and what's not. And other people's feelings? Other people's choices? Not in your control, ever. You can influence them, sure. You can be your best self, offer value, treat them well. But you cannot control whether they choose you, whether they stay, whether they wake up one day and feel differently. To base your peace on something you fundamentally cannot control is to guarantee your own suffering. Think about what happens to your behavior when you're in this state of ego-driven desire. You become calculating. You're constantly trying to figure out what she wants, what will make her happy, what will keep her interested. But you're not doing this from genuine care, you're doing it from fear. Fear that if you don't perform correctly, she'll leave. Fear that if you're yourself, you won't be enough. And women sense this. They sense when you're performing rather than being, when you're negotiating rather than connecting, when you're there out of need rather than choice. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. In the context of romantic desire, this means recognizing that her response to you is an outside event. Whether she texts back, whether she's warm or cold, whether she stays or leaves, these are outside events. Your power lies in your mind, in how you interpret these events, in whether you allow them to shake your core or whether you remain steady regardless. This steadiness is not indifference in the sense of not caring. It's indifference in the sense of not being moved from your center. You can care about someone deeply while simultaneously not needing them to complete you. You can desire someone while not being desperate for them. You can invest in a relationship while knowing you'll be fine if it ends. This is the Stoic way, and it's the only way that preserves both your dignity and your sanity. The ego doesn't like this approach because the ego feeds on drama, on the highs and lows, on the validation and the fear of losing it. The ego wants you obsessed because obsession keeps you small, keeps you focused on something outside yourself, keeps you from the deeper work of becoming someone who doesn't need external validation to feel whole. And so it disguises this obsession as love, as passion, as romantic intensity. It makes you believe that if you don't feel this desperate pull, you don't really care. But consider what the absence of this desperation actually creates. When you're not desperately seeking a woman's approval, when you're not constantly anxious about losing her, you're free to actually see her. Not as a solution to your ego's problems, but as a human being with her own complexity, her own journey, her own struggles. You're free to connect authentically rather than strategically. You're free to be vulnerable without being needy, to care without being desperate, to love without losing yourself. This is the paradox that drives people crazy. The less you need her, the more attractive you become. Not because you're playing games, but because neediness is fundamentally unattractive. It signals low value in evolutionary terms. It signals instability. A man who's complete on his own, who has his own purpose and direction, who treats a woman as an addition to his life rather than the foundation of it, that's attractive. Not because of manipulation, but because it's the truth of a well-built inner life. Let's go deeper into what desire actually is and why it hijacks your rational mind so completely. Desire, in the Stoic framework, is not the simple wanting of something. It's the judgment that you need that thing to be happy. It's the belief that your well-being depends on obtaining and keeping the object of desire. And when that object is a woman, when your desire becomes entangled with ego and identity and validation, it becomes one of the most powerful forces you'll ever face. The Stoics weren't against pleasure or connection. They weren't advocating for a life of isolation or emotional suppression. What they were against was being enslaved by desire, being controlled by wants that turn you into someone you're not. Seneca wrote, "No person is free who is not master of himself." And when you're in the grip of desperate romantic desire, you are not master of yourself. Your desire is the master, and you're just following its commands. Neuroscience gives us insight into why this is so powerful. When you're attracted to someone, when you're in the early stages of romantic obsession, your brain releases dopamine, the same neurotransmitter involved in addiction. You get a hit when she responds positively, when she's affectionate, when things are going well. And like any addiction, you start craving that hit. You start structuring your life around getting it. And when it's withdrawn, when she's distant or unavailable, you experience withdrawal. The anxiety, the obsessive checking, the inability to focus, these are withdrawal symptoms. Understanding this doesn't make it go away, but it does give you perspective. You're not experiencing something uniquely meaningful or romantic. You're experiencing a neurochemical response that humans have been experiencing since we evolved the capacity for pair bonding. It's biology, it's psychology, and while it feels overwhelming, it's not actually telling you truth about your life or your worth or what you need to be happy. The Stoic practice here is to observe the desire without being consumed by it. To notice, I'm experiencing strong desire for this woman. My body is flooded with neurochemicals that make this feel urgent and all-important. But this feeling is not reality. It's a feeling. This is the gap, the space between stimulus and response that Viktor Frankl talked about, the space where your freedom lives. The stimulus is her presence or absence, her warmth or coldness. The response is what you choose to do with that stimulus. Most men never find this gap. They go straight from stimulus to response, no space in between. She's cold, they panic. She's warm, they feel relieved. She's distant, they chase. She's close, they cling. It's all reaction, no choice. And this reactive pattern is exactly what the Stoics were teaching people to break free from. Not so you become a robot without feelings, but so you become a person who has feelings but isn't controlled by them. Let's talk about what this looks like practically. You meet a woman you're attracted to. The attraction is real, the desire is real. The Stoic approach is not to deny this or suppress it. The approach is to notice it and then ask, what do I actually control here? You control whether you approach her. You control how you present yourself. You control whether you're honest or playing games. You control how you treat her. That's it. That's the full list of what you control. You don't control whether she's attracted to you. You don't control her past relationships or her current emotional state. You don't control whether she's ready for what you're offering. You don't control her fears or her wounds or her patterns. You don't control whether she chooses you. And once you really internalize this, once you really accept that her response is not in your control, something shifts. The desperation eases because desperation comes from trying to control what you can't control. This doesn't mean you don't try. It doesn't mean you don't put effort into the connection. It means you try from a place of offering rather than a place of needing. You offer your best self, your authenticity, your presence, and then you detach from the outcome. Not because you don't care about the outcome, but because you recognize that the outcome is not up to you alone. It's up to her too, and to circumstances, and to timing, and to 1,000 variables you can't see or control. Epictetus used the metaphor of a traveler at an inn. When you're traveling and you stop at an inn, you don't try to own the inn. You don't base your identity on that inn. You enjoy it while you're there, you treat it well, and when it's time to leave, you leave. You don't cling to it or fall apart because you have to continue your journey. The inn is not your home. Your home is yourself, your character, your capacity to journey through life regardless of what inns you find along the way. A woman is like the inn in this metaphor. You can enjoy her company, you can care for her deeply, you can invest in the connection. But she's not your home. Your home is you. And if you make her your home, if you try to possess her the way you'd possess a house, you'll suffer. Because people are not possessions. They're travelers on their own journeys, and sometimes your paths align for a while, and sometimes they don't. The ego hates this teaching because the ego wants to own, to control, to make permanent what is by nature impermanent. The ego wants guarantees. It wants her to promise she'll never leave, never change her mind, never stop desiring you. But life doesn't offer these guarantees. Change is the only constant. People grow, circumstances shift, feelings evolve. The Stoic way is to embrace this impermanence rather than fight it, to love fully while holding loosely, to invest deeply while knowing nothing is permanent. There's a Buddhist concept that pairs well with Stoic thought here: non-attachment. It's often misunderstood as not caring, but it actually means caring without clinging. It means loving without needing to own. It means desiring without being enslaved by desire. You can want her in your life while simultaneously being okay if she's not. These are not contradictory states. They're the mark of emotional maturity and inner freedom. Think about the most attractive version of yourself. Not physically attractive, but the version of you that other people are drawn to. That seems to have a kind of magnetism. That version is not the one checking his phone constantly. It's not the one anxious and uncertain and seeking reassurance. It's the version that's engaged with his own life, that has purpose and direction, that's present and confident and self-contained. That version isn't pretending not to care. That version genuinely has a full life that doesn't require any particular woman to validate it. This is what women often mean when they talk about wanting a man who has his own life. They're not talking about wanting someone distant or unavailable. They're talking about wanting someone who doesn't need them to complete him, someone who chooses to be with them rather than needs to be with them. Because need is heavy, need is pressure. Need makes the relationship about managing your emotions rather than about genuine connection and growth. The Stoics would say, focus on what you can control, which is becoming a person of character and purpose. Focus on your own development, your own journey, your own virtue. And then, from that place of fullness, invite someone to share the journey. Don't ask them to be the journey. Don't make them responsible for your happiness or your sense of worth. Come to the relationship whole, not looking to be completed. Now we need to address the hardest part. What to do when she's actually in your life and you feel yourself slipping into neediness, into that desperate attachment you know isn't healthy but can't seem to shake. Because understanding these principles intellectually is one thing. Practicing them when your nervous system is activated, when you're lying in bed at night wondering why she hasn't texted back, when you're watching her pull away and every instinct is screaming at you to chase. That's where the real work happens. The first thing to understand is that your feelings are information, not commands. When you feel that anxious pull, that desperate need to reach out or to seek reassurance, your body is telling you something. It's saying, I feel unsafe. I sense a threat to something I value. This is old programming, evolutionary wiring that helped our ancestors survive. The threat of abandonment, of being cast out from the tribe, was life-threatening for most of human history. So your nervous system treats romantic rejection like a survival threat. But here's the crucial part. Your nervous system is often wrong about what's actually dangerous. It's operating on outdated software. Being single is not actually life-threatening in the modern world. A woman losing interest in you is not the catastrophe your body thinks it is. Your survival doesn't depend on any one person's approval. But your nervous system doesn't know this. It's still running Stone Age programs in a modern context. The Stoic practice is to talk back to these programs, to question the story your body is telling you. When you feel that panic rising, that compulsion to check your phone or to reach out for reassurance, pause. Get some space between the feeling and the action. Ask yourself, what am I actually afraid of here? Usually, the answer is rejection. And then ask, What happens if I am rejected? What's the actual consequence? The honest answer is, you'll feel pain. You'll be disappointed. You'll have to adjust your expectations and move forward differently. That's it. You won't die. You won't cease to exist. You'll experience temporary emotional discomfort. When you really sit with this, when you realize that the worst-case scenario is survivable, something shifts. The feeling is still there, the anxiety, the desire, the fear, but it's not in the driver's seat anymore. You're observing it rather than being it. This is what the Stoics meant by not being moved. Not that you don't feel, but that you don't let the feeling dictate your choices. Marcus Aurelius had a practice he called objective representation. When he felt overwhelmed by desire or fear, he would describe the object of his feeling in the most plain, physical terms possible. Instead of, the beautiful woman I'm obsessed with, he'd describe the biological reality. A human organism, meat and bone, subject to decay. This sounds harsh, almost cruel, but the purpose wasn't to devalue women. The purpose was to strip away the projections, the fantasy, the story he was telling himself that gave that person power over his inner state. You can adapt this practice. When you find yourself obsessing over a woman, describe the situation objectively. Not, she's perfect and I need her.